had that for 50 years. Yes, I did.
That Iowa soybean farmer says we could be headed for another farm crisis.
Iowa's once lush corn and soybean fields are now parched and brittle, stretching across a state that has long been known as America's breadbasket. Farmers are staring at soaring production costs, collapsing crop prices, and mounting bankruptcies, pushing the governor to take emergency action. With the heart of the nation's farming economy at stake, one question looms large. Can Iowa survive this agricultural nightmare? Or is the heartland headed for a financial catastrophe? Right now, Iowa is facing a crisis that's hard to overstate. Corn and soybean fields that once stretched like oceans of green are drying up, leaving farmers staring at brown, brittle soil and numbers that don't add up. The governor of Iowa has officially sounded the alarm, and it's not hard to see why. Farming here is no longer just hard work. It's a financial tightrope walk where one wrong step can mean disaster. Lance Liebridge, a veteran in the agriculture world, puts it bluntly: next year, every acre will lose $180, even with record yields. And when you really break down the numbers, it becomes terrifyingly clear why Iowa's leaders are panicking.
Farmers are starting their harvest, but they face steep losses that could fuel farm bankruptcies and foreclosures nationwide.
Let's talk math, because that's where the story gets real. The cost to plant, grow, and harvest 1 acre of corn in Iowa is now an eye-watering $9.16. That includes everything from seeds, fertilizer, and chemicals to fuel, machinery upkeep, labor, land rent, and even the interest farmers pay on operating loans. To simply break even, a farmer needs to sell that corn at $5 per bushel. But the market isn't playing fair. Right now, cash prices for corn hover between $3.71 and $4.23 per bushel. Do the math with me. 180 bushels per acre at $4 per bushel brings in only $720. Compare that to the $916 it costs to grow, and suddenly, each acre planted is leaving a $196 hole in the farmer's pocket. Even if prices climb to $4.23s, farmers still lose over $150 per acre. It doesn't matter if it's a good year with record yields. The losses are baked into the system, and no amount of hard work can change that. It might feel like farmers could just plant more acres to make up the difference, but the truth is grim. The U.S. planted nearly 92 million acres of corn in 2025, and Iowa's fields make up a huge chunk of that. The resulting harvest is expected to top 15 billion bushels. Add in leftover corn from the previous year, plus a small amount of imports, and total supply is hitting more than 17 billion bushels. That's an enormous pile of corn sitting on the market, and here's the problem. Demand isn't keeping up. Ethanol production is steady, livestock feed consumption is stable, and exports haven't grown to absorb the surplus. Prices are being crushed because supply vastly outweighs demand.
Growers say they feel betrayed after the Trump administration gave Argentina a financial lifeline, a $20 billion loan. Argentina then immediately dropped their soy tariffs to China, undercut.
The situation gets even trickier when you consider international factors. China, once the world's biggest buyer of U.S. soybeans, has shifted almost entirely to imports from Brazil and Argentina. In a normal year, China would have imported between 300 and 400 million bushels of soybeans from the U.S. by this point. This season, that market is almost completely closed to Iowa farmers. That's a huge chunk of revenue simply gone. Corn might dominate headlines, but soybeans are also a vital lifeline for Iowa's agricultural economy, and losing such a large export market tightens the squeeze further. When you look at historical patterns, the numbers get even scarier. Economists have found that when ending stocks of corn, basically the corn left unsold at the end of the marketing year, rise above 2 billion bushels, prices almost always sink into the $3 to low $4 range. That's exactly where the market is now. For Iowa farmers, this means there's very little hope of a sudden price rebound. No matter how many acres they plant or how high their yields, the market is saturated. In fact, planting more only deepens the financial hole because each acre continues to operate at a loss.
We don't do something. We're not going to have no family farms.
In Arkansas, hundreds of farmers packed into a church to plead for help from the government.
I'm in the worst shape right now that I've ever been in.
With prices for crops crashing, farmers are doing everything they can to stay viable, even selling off equipment.
The human side of this crisis is just as urgent. Families who have farmed the same land for generations are now facing impossible choices. Some younger farmers who rent most of their land and haven't had time to build up reserves are especially vulnerable. Even a single bad year can push them toward bankruptcy. And it's not just theory anymore. In the first quarter of 2025, Chapter 12 farm bankruptcy filings in the U.S. jumped 70% compared to the previous year. Iowa alone accounted for 18 of those filings, more than any other state, despite having a smaller population than California. Lenders are tightening credit, asking for more collateral, higher down payments, or simply saying no. Without financing, farmers can't even plant the next crop, creating a vicious cycle of debt and despair. And it's not just the farmers themselves who feel the impact. The ripple effects reach deep into Iowa's rural communities. Farms are often the backbone of local economies, and when they struggle, so do banks, equipment suppliers, laborers, and small businesses that depend on agricultural prosperity. Statewide, 1 in 5 jobs is tied directly or indirectly to agriculture. With corn losing roughly $180 per acre, the damage spreads quickly. Net income for the state's agricultural sector is projected to drop nearly 24% by 2026, erasing billions in earnings and potentially driving farmland values down. The future of rural towns is on the line.
Shape right now that I've ever been in.
With prices for crops crashing, farmers are doing everything they can to stay viable, even selling off equipment. Joel.
What makes the crisis even more frightening is the fact that the problems are structural. Since 2022, corn prices have fallen by nearly half, from a brief spike above $8 per bushel to the low $4 range, while costs for fertilizer, machinery, seed, and interest have barely budged. Even with average weather conditions and solid yields, the economics don't work. Farmers are left running calculations that almost guarantee losses before they even plant the seed. In short, the system is stacked against them, and there's no quick fix in sight. Iowa's governor, now aware of the scope of the disaster, has to think not just about individual farms, but about the entire state economy. Emergency measures, state-level interventions, and federal assistance may be necessary just to prevent the collapse from spreading further. But solutions aren't simple. How do you boost prices when the market is overflowing? How do you support farmers whose costs are climbing while global demand remains flat? The stakes are enormous, and the answers are far from obvious. For the average Iowan, the situation might seem abstract. After all, corn and soybeans are just crops, right? But these fields feed the nation and fuel economies far beyond state lines. From grocery store prices to ethanol production, from livestock feed to exports, what happens in Iowa doesn't stay in Iowa. If farmers are losing money on every acre, the effects ripple across the food chain, potentially driving up costs for consumers while threatening the livelihoods of thousands of families who make up the backbone of America's heartland. The reality is clear. Iowa farmers are trapped in a perfect storm of high costs, low prices, and oversaturated markets. Planting more acres isn't the answer, it's part of the problem. For many families, this isn't just an economic challenge. It's a fight for survival, a struggle to maintain traditions, and a battle to keep the heart of America's agricultural economy alive. The governor's panic isn't just political theater. It's a reflection of a real and urgent crisis, one that has consequences for the state, the nation, and the future of farming in the U.S. As corn and soy fields continue to dry, as the numbers continue to pile up, and as families stare at spreadsheets instead of harvests, the question becomes impossible to ignore. What comes next for Iowa? Will the state find a way to stabilize its farmers and protect the economy? Or are we witnessing the slow unraveling of the nation's breadbasket? For now, the answer remains uncertain, And every acre planted is a gamble in a market that seems designed to punish those who grow the crops we all rely on.
We want trade with China we want that to move forward, and we want the trade disruption and war over with. But they also recognize the fact that they've been a bad actor.
Iowa's farming crisis is no longer just a story in the newspapers. It's a reality hitting families, communities, and the state's economy hard. The governor is panicking, and for good reason. Across the state, corn and soybean fields are drying up, and the numbers behind the crisis are staggering. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, Iowa accounted for 18. Chapter 12 Farm Bankruptcy Filings, the highest of any state in the nation. That may not sound huge to some, but in a state with fewer people than California and about 25,000 more farms, it's a red flag that something serious is going wrong. On top of that, 4.3% of all farm loans in the area are now flagged as troubled, the highest share since 2020. The warning signs are everywhere, and the people most at risk are often the younger farmers and those renting land who don't have the equity or financial reserves that established, multi-generational farms can lean on. For them, even a single bad year could be devastating. Take Vern Hosk, for example. Sitting at his kitchen table, he spreads out receipts, invoices, and loan statements trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. Fertilizer prices have soared, machinery costs are up 25 to 30%, and even basic repairs now threaten to blow his monthly budget. Interest on borrowed money has nearly doubled in just a few years, turning what used to be manageable debts into a slow, constant drain on working capital. Vern isn't alone. Thousands of farmers across Iowa are feeling the squeeze in the same way. What was once a stable, dependable profession is now a high-risk game, and every decision about planting or harvesting comes with financial anxiety attached.
Spent a lot of time traveling the state and talking to farmers, and that's why, their focus is on looking for new markets to solidify what we have.
This isn't just about individual farmers, though. Entire communities are at stake. Multi-generational farms, which have been the backbone of Iowa for decades, are at risk of disappearing. These farms are more than just land and crops. They're local traditions, family histories, and pillars of small-town economies. When farms fail, local banks lose deposits, equipment suppliers lose business, and towns that rely on agriculture for employment start to falter. The effects ripple outward, touching everyone in the region, from grocery stores and restaurants to schools and service providers. It's a crisis that doesn't stay on the farm. It spreads across the state like wildfire. Experts in the field are sounding the alarm as well. Chad Hart, an agricultural economist, emphasizes that this is a systemic problem, not just a bad year for a few unlucky farmers. Rising input costs, collapsing prices, and tight credit combine to create a situation that affects everyone connected to agriculture. Tyre Reitman from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City explains that younger farmers and renters are particularly vulnerable, lacking the financial cushion older operations have built over generations. Without access to operating loans, many of these farmers may not even be able to plant their crops for the next season, creating a dangerous cycle of insolvency. The numbers back this up. More than 4,000 agriculture-adjacent jobs have already disappeared, and Iowa's net farm income is projected to drop 24% by 2026, translating into roughly $3 billion lost from the state's economy. The financial implications are alarming, but the human side of the story makes the situation even more pressing. Families who have farmed the same land for decades now face decisions they never imagined making: how to keep the farm afloat, whether to sell, or whether to walk away entirely. Farmland values, currently around $4,350 per acre, are at risk of plummeting if losses continue, further eroding the equity that farmers rely on for loans and retirement plans. The stress is not just on the farm, it's in the local schools, grocery stores, and service businesses that rely on farm incomes. When Iowa farmers struggle, the towns around them struggle too, creating a ripple effect that touches virtually every corner of the state's economy. Credit is another major pain point. Banks and lenders are tightening their requirements, demanding more collateral, higher down payments, or refusing to extend new operating loans altogether. For farmers who rely on these loans to buy seed, fertilizer, and equipment, a denial can mean they cannot plant a crop at all. That scenario isn't hypothetical, it's happening right now. And as young farmers get pushed out or forced to take on unsustainable debt, the long-term impact on Iowa's agricultural landscape could be devastating. The state risks losing an entire generation of independent farmers, replaced instead by larger operations or absentee landlords. The governor's concern is completely justified. This isn't a temporary setback. It's a structural problem that threatens Iowa's economy at every level. Corn and soybean prices remain below the break-even point, while production costs continue to climb. Planting more acres doesn't solve the problem, it only adds to the financial losses. With over 92 million acres of corn planted nationwide in 2025 and Iowa contributing a huge portion of that, the market is oversaturated. Ethanol production, livestock feed, and exports are not enough to soak up the supply, keeping prices pinned and farmers trapped in a system that seems to reward volume rather than profitability. For the average Iowan, the numbers might seem abstract, but they matter deeply. 1 in 5 jobs in the state depends on agriculture, directly or indirectly. When farmers lose money, it isn't just their problem. It's a problem for banks, suppliers, employees, and the small towns that depend on farm revenue. A $180 loss per acre may sound small in isolation, but multiply that across hundreds of thousands of acres, and the losses spiral into billions of dollars. The economic health of the state, as well as the social fabric of its communities, is at stake. And while the governor may be taking emergency steps, the solutions aren't simple. Raising prices requires global market changes that Iowa cannot control. Cutting costs is limited by the realities of modern farming, where fuel, fertilizer, and equipment are already at record highs. Even government support programs have limits, and in many cases, they may arrive too late to prevent farms from going under. The challenges are systemic, requiring coordinated responses from state, federal, and private sectors, and even then, the outcome is uncertain. The emotional toll is just as heavy as the financial one. Multi-generational farms represent family legacies, and losing them can feel like losing a part of Iowa itself. Communities that have grown up around these farms are seeing the first signs of strain. Businesses closing, young people leaving, and a sense of anxiety spreading across rural towns. It's not just about crops, it's about the future of the state's heartland. Families, banks, schools, and local businesses are all intertwined with the success or failure of these farms, and the current crisis threatens every thread in that fabric. In short, Iowa's farming situation is a perfect storm of rising costs, falling prices, tight credit, and oversupply. The governor's panic is more than political theatrics. It's a reflection of a deep and urgent crisis that touches the state economically, socially, and emotionally. For farmers, every decision has massive consequences. For the state, every policy move carries weighty stakes. And for the nation, the health of Iowa's agriculture directly impacts food supply, commodity markets, and the rural economy. As corn and soy fields continue to struggle under dry conditions and economic pressure, the question becomes unavoidable. Will Iowa's farmers survive this storm, or are we watching the slow unraveling of America's breadbasket? The answer is uncertain, but one thing is clear: every acre, every loan, and every decision matters more than ever. Iowa is facing a crisis that feels almost unimaginable. Corn and soybean fields, the lifeblood of the state's economy, are drying up, leaving farmers staring at empty soil and bills that keep climbing. The governor of Iowa has officially entered panic mode, and it's not just for show. Across the state, emergency farm meetings are being held. The governor has personally visited parched fields, and worried farmers are speaking out to the media, sharing the harsh realities of life on the farm in 2025. The word unprecedented keeps coming up, and with good reason. The financial strain on Iowa's farmers has reached levels the state hasn't seen in decades, and the ripple effects are already spreading beyond the fields into communities, banks, and small businesses. The numbers behind this crisis are hard to ignore. Even with average yields, farmers are losing money on nearly every acre they plant. Input costs have skyrocketed. Fertilizer, machinery, seed, and interest rates are all at record highs. while corn and soybean prices have stayed stubbornly below break-even levels. Every dollar farmers spend to grow crops is a gamble, and right now, the odds are stacked against them. The governor knows this. Meetings with agricultural experts and state officials have made it clear that without some form of intervention, the state risks a full-scale collapse of its farming economy. Emergency measures, state programs, and federal assistance are being considered, but there's a real question about whether they will be enough or arrive in time. Walking through the fields, the governor can see the impact firsthand. Corn stalks curl in the sun, soy plants struggle to survive, and tractors sit idle on dry earth. It's one thing to read about losses on paper, but seeing the damage in person brings a different urgency. Farmers share their fears openly, some quietly, others with visible frustration. They talk about loans that they cannot pay back, about crops that will not cover their costs, about the fear of losing land that has been in their family for generations. These conversations are not just numbers, they are the lifeblood of communities, families, and towns that depend on agriculture for their very survival.
Still intellectual property, technology transfer, currency manipulation, those, we can't allow that to happen either. So I believe that the more allies that we can,
The governor has called for emergency farm meetings across the state, trying to coordinate responses and listen to the problems farmers face. Experts like agricultural economists, bankers, and state officials are brought together to find solutions. But solutions are complicated. Prices are pinned down by oversupply, costs are climbing faster than anyone can keep up with, and credit is tightening. Even if the state injects funds or provides temporary relief, it doesn't solve the fundamental problem. Farming in Iowa has become a financial trap. Planting more acres won't help. It might even make losses worse. Yet farmers plant anyway, hoping that a bigger harvest can offset the losses, a gamble that may not pay off. The human stories make the crisis even more tangible. Farmers who once felt secure are now anxious, weighing every decision carefully. Young farmers in particular feel the pressure. Many rent their land and lack the equity older generations have built up over decades. For them, the inability to secure loans or cover costs could mean the end of their farming careers before they've truly begun. Multi-generational farms are at risk too. Families who have tilled the same land for decades are now forced to make hard choices, potentially selling land or walking away entirely. It's not just a financial loss, it's a cultural and social loss that affects rural towns, schools, businesses, and communities. Statewide, the stakes are enormous. Iowa's agricultural economy supports 1 in 5 jobs in the state, either directly or indirectly. Losing farms isn't just a problem for farmers, it's a threat to local economies, banks, suppliers, and towns that rely on farm income. The governor's office is fully aware that the crisis is bigger than any single family or farm. The state could see billions of dollars in lost revenue, thousands of lost jobs, and falling farmland values if emergency measures aren't implemented. For the governor, the pressure is immense. Finding a way to stabilize the state's farming economy while dealing with national market forces that are largely out of Iowa's control is a delicate, urgent balancing act. Federal assistance is being explored as well. Programs that provide emergency funding, low-interest loans, or cost-sharing for inputs may offer temporary relief, but they cannot solve the structural issues in the market. Corn and soybean prices are dictated by global supply and demand, which are currently unfavorable to Iowa farmers. Even a small improvement in the market won't bring back financial stability if input costs remain sky high and credit remains tight. State and federal cooperation is critical, but time is running out, and the governor must act quickly to prevent a cascading collapse. The emotional toll is just as significant as the financial one. Walking through rural towns, it's impossible to ignore the anxiety and uncertainty on people's faces. Farmers share stories of sleepless nights, conversations with lenders that end with bad news, and the struggle to make ends meet while trying to plant the next crop. Communities are bracing for the economic ripple effects. Small businesses dependent on farmers are seeing declining sales. banks are concerned about loan defaults, and schools in rural areas worry about declining enrollment as families move away in search of stability. The pressure on the governor is not abstract. It's deeply personal, touching the lives of real people who have invested their hearts and souls in the state's agricultural backbone.
Resolve sooner rather than later. We're also, I know, working with Japan to possibly do a bilateral with them as well. So we need.
With all of this in mind, the governor's question is simple yet terrifying. With prices stuck below break-even and costs soaring, what can the state do to prevent a full-scale collapse of Iowa's farming economy? There is no easy answer. Policies can help, temporary relief can provide a lifeline, but the underlying problem, high costs, low prices, oversupply, and limited credit, is structural and will require careful, long-term solutions. The governor's challenge is immense, balancing immediate action with strategic planning, all while trying to maintain hope among farmers whose livelihoods are on the line. Emergency farm meetings continue, where state officials, economists, and farmers discuss everything from planting strategies to financial aid. The governor listens closely, walking the fields, looking at the data, and hearing firsthand the concerns of people who are literally watching their livelihoods wither in front of them. The mood is tense but not hopeless. There is a sense that coordinated action could make a difference if implemented quickly and effectively. Farmers, for their part, are cautiously optimistic, hoping that the state and federal government can intervene before more families lose their farms. This crisis is a stark reminder that Iowa's farms are more than just fields. They are the heart of the state's economy, the center of communities, and a crucial part of America's food supply. As the governor grapples with emergency measures, the stakes could not be higher. Every decision, every policy, and every dollar matters. Farmers are counting on leadership that understands both the urgency and the complexity of the situation. The question remains, can Iowa pull through this crisis without losing its farms, its communities, and its future? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. The governor, the state, and the people of Iowa are facing a challenge unlike any other in recent memory, and the world is watching.